Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, it's been a while. It's a medical shit to take care of. That's a different video for a different time. I'm way too distracted with OBS right now. At least it's recording. So, this is a video regarding the 2024 primaries for the Republican Party. And as you can see, I have a map right here. These are the states up until Super Tuesday and the week afterwards. So, as you can read below, there is 1,324 delegates, and you need 1,234 delegates to become the nominee. So, there is a great likelihood with this map that we already have a nominee. So, we're going in order. I also have the polling with me. I'll show you quickly how it looks like. So for each individual state, what it looks like, the amount of undecideds, I will read those out later on to make sure that we have everything. So in some states, like the Virgin Islands, we don't have any polling. Same goes for for DC, for Idaho, and as a result, I just took the national polling and left it with that. So first off, state of Iowa. That is next Monday, so in 6 days, we have our first contest. And I'm going to read from the green papers here, quoting it. Delegates are proportionally allocated to the presidential contenders based on the statewide vote, which means the number of votes multiplied by 40 divided by the total statewide votes, otherwise known as you take the proportionality of the vote multiplied by 40, that's the amount of delegates you get. Fractions are rounded to the nearest whole number. If there are too many delegates allocated, the candidate nearest to the rounding threshold receives an additional delegate. If there are too few, if there are too many delegates are allocated, the one furthest away from the threshold loses a delegate. So we keep this in. So, Iowa. Trump is now polling at 51%. So what we're doing is we have, we can actually do this a little bit quicker if you want. So it's already 50, but just to make sure, 51.3 multiplied by 40, and I really should be doing this, 20.52. So that's 21 delegates. I'll write it down here on Excel as well, just so I know who is the furthest away from the threshold. Then we have Ron DeSantis, 7.4, rounded to the nearest number, which means he gets 7 delegates. 7.4. Now we have Nikki Haley, who's polling at 16.1% at the moment, 6.44, which means 6 delegates. And we can already see a little bit of a problem arising, that as soon as you are away from a particular threshold, then the additional delegate might be just a coin flip, I guess. And we know the coin flip is going to be in favor of Haley. We can already say that. Sorry, that's it. 2.36, so 2 delegates for Ramaswamy. And then we have Christie with 1.48. So we can already see we have delegates left over, 3 namely. Hutchinson is going to get like 0.7, not even a percentage point, so he's not going to get a delegate. So, back to the bylaws. Too few delegates allocated together nearest the rounding threshold receives an additional delegate. Okay. In this particular case, that would be, because we already rounded up Trump, Christie gets 1, DeSantis gets 1, and Haley gets 1. So we have first contest, Trump outright wins the majority, 52.5 25% of the delegates, so he's already off to a great start. Now you move on. New Hampshire. This is, let's see, here we go. 22 delegates are bound proportionally to the contenders based on the primary vote statewide. There is a 10% threshold. If you do not meet it, you do not get any delegates. And let's see. So what you do is you take the individuals that met the threshold, and then you multiply their percentage by 22. That's the amount of delegates they get, rounded appropriately. And then any delegate that's left over goes to whoever won the contest. It's relatively simple to understand. So now we have the polling, and all the polling here I took from Real Clear Politics, and it's up to date to January 4th. Then again, there hasn't been any polling since. So we have this. New Hampshire, Donald Trump has 46.3 at the aggregate. Multiply that by 22, which means 10 delegates. Right off the gate. So we already have that. Now, Nikki Haley, she's at 25%. That is 5 delegates. Then we have Chris Christie, who is just above the threshold, who gets 2 delegates. And then we have Ron DeSantis, he has 9.5% of the vote, and we have Ramaswamy, who is 6. So, with 2% undecided vote, I don't believe that DeSantis is going to exceed the threshold, and as a result, no further delegates will be allocated. Now, there is a possibility that Nikki Haley could get a 6th delegate. That is possible. Which would require her to get at least 0.3 of a percentage point more, so that is feasible. So for this scenario, I'm gonna add that one to Haley, and the rest goes to Trump. Simple, right? Nevada, as a third contest, we have a primary with 0 allocated delegates, thanks to the Nevada DNC. Nikki Haley is the only one participating in it. Everyone else is participating in the caucus. So Haley, congratulations, you win the primary, but you get no delegates. So I don't know why you did that. Nevada caucus. We have, let's see, polling regarding that. We have Chris Christie at 5%. And with the bylaws, I should mention that in Nevada, you must receive 3.8% of the vote. If you don't get any delegates, period. There's a threshold there. If they're 23 to be bound, because the RNC doesn't want to do any shit, then it's 4.3% of the vote. That's not the case here. So what you do is you take the percentage, multiply it of the vote share, multiply it by 26 for anyone that meets the threshold. If there's anything left over, then you give the delegates to the candidates with the largest remainder first. That's how it works. Okay, so we have from low to high, Ramaswamy at 2%, Christie at 5%, DeSantis at 15%, and Trump is polling at 75%. So we're doing this. And I just want to make sure, let's double check it, right? Christie at 5% of the vote is 1.3 delegates. DeSantis at 3.9. And we're already sure that we don't have rounded everything up, so here you go. And then Trump is at 19.5, so 20. We have 1 delegate left over, considering everyone's rounded up except for Christie. You're lucky you're getting the last one. So, 4th contest. is the Virgin Islands, because they're right adjacent to Nevada in the schedule. Here's the thing though, they don't have 9 delegates anymore because they organized their primary in a non-compliant fashion with the RNC rules. As a result, they now have 4 delegates for this cycle. And it is a winner-take-all contest. So we're just going to hand those to Trump. Easy, right? South Carolina is right up next. 21 delegates, 3 for every congressional district, and then 29 for the at-large state. The districts are allocated to presidential contenders based on the primary result in each district. The presidential candidate with the greatest vote share in each district receives all delegates. We're just going to do this. No particular reason. And the remainder, 29, is allocated to the one receiving the most votes. So we're just going to say Trump gets every vote and we'll leave it at that. So now we are at essentially just before Super Tuesday. There are a few more states. Trump is already at 109. This particular point, we have Christie at 6 delegates, DeSantis at 12, Haley at 13, Ramaswamy at 2, and Trump above 100. Trump still needs roughly 1,100 delegates in order to get the nomination. So we aren't done by far, but looking at the polling share that he is right now, he's above 60% nationally, and that is a significant number because a lot of states convert their primary to a winner-take-all system if the leading candidate is above 60%. Some states have it at 2/3 of the vote, other states have it at a combination says you need to reach 75% of the vote, but if the number 2 doesn't get 15%, it becomes winner-take-all. So you have those kind of things playing in. Let's go to the next one, Michigan. Michigan takes place in two legs, basically, because the state party, the Democrats, stated we want a primary and we want it in February, and that is non-compliant with the RNC rules. So what the Michigan Republican Party did, said, okay, we're splitting it off. We have a primary and we have a caucus. And in this way, there were no perfect way to put it would be no penalties attached to it. So the primary has 16 delegates. There's 16 delegates. So then we have they are bound proportionally to whoever reaches 12.5 percentage points of the vote. Now, last polling regarding Michigan is Trump at 62.5%, Haley at 8.8%, DeSantis at 12.8%, Ramaswamy at 6%, Christie at 3.8%, and Michigan at 0.3%, with 6% undecided. What this means is there are only 2 candidates at the moment that are eligible for delegates, Trump and DeSantis. Now we're going to really quickly do the math. Let's say 6 percentage points. It's allocated just to the 2 of them. Right, so we put DeSantis at 15.8% of the vote, multiplied by 16, that gets him 3 delegates. And thus Trump gets 13. There. Now, the next contest is a few weeks later. So we have the primary at February 27th, on a Tuesday. And then the same Saturday, you have, so March 2nd, you have the caucus. And here is the 39 for each district. Again, we have the same threshold for individual districts. let's see. So we have that. We have in each congressional district, if a candidate receives 50% plus one of the vote, that candidate receives all 3 delegates. So Trump gets this. So 52 delegates for Donald Trump, 3 for Ron DeSantis. Next up, we've had Michigan. Now we have the caucus of the presidential primary in Washington, D.C. So the District of Columbia, 19 delegates to be allocated here, and it says if anyone has 50% of the vote, you receive all delegates. Otherwise, are to be bound proportionally for anyone receiving more than 15% of the vote. If nobody reaches 15%, the threshold becomes 10%. If no one reaches that, it becomes straight up proportional without a threshold. Trump is about 50, so he gets everything. Simple, right? Last contest before Super Tuesday, Idaho. And I'm going to read from the RNC rules. If one candidate receives more than 50% of the vote, he receives all delegates. So we're already saying, we already have a pattern approaching here. Trump is polling above 50% nationwide. It's going to be a little higher in Idaho because that's kind of one of its strong states, as is the South. So Trump gets everything. And we're going in Super Tuesday with Trump having a delegate lead of almost 200. And he still needs just a little over 1,000 to get there. So now we have Super Tuesday. And this is where the fun begins. Alaska. See, a presidential candidate must receive 13% of the vote to be allocated any delegates. And it is straight up proportional. So let's go for the polling. We don't have much in Alaska, but what we do know nationwide is that only Trump reaches the 13% threshold. Now I can look really quickly at RCP and let's see if we have a poll in Alaska. I doubt it. Search function. I mean, Real Clear overhauled its website, so it's a little difficult searching right now. Polls. I can't search. That's stupid. We don't have anything for Alaska. That is too bad. With that, I'm just going to assume national polling. We have 7% undecided vote. And how it's going to be allocated, well, we have no clue at this point. I'm thinking most of it goes to Trump. So let's just keep it at Trump is the only one reaching the threshold. Then we have state of Alabama. And it says we have a winner-take-most system, which means the congressional districts. If you receive more than 50% of the vote, you get all delegates, or if only one candidate receives 20% of the vote or more, then the candidate is allocated all delegates. So what it means is, if a particular candidate has a strong performance, he gets 3 delegates from the congressional district. However, if there is an even performance among multiple candidates, then the top 3 delegates will candidates will each get a delegate. So it's kind of spread out like that. Same principle applies for the statewide elections. So in this particular case, we have Trump. He's polling above 50% in everyone, so he gets all delegates. State of Arkansas, and this is a little bit of a weird one. Let's just get a little drink here. Sip for the working man, I guess. If you receive more than 50% of the vote, you get all delegates. Well, Trump is performing at 62, so he gets all delegates for the congressional districts. At large, any candidate polling above 15% receives 1 delegate. Now, Ron DeSantis, I did see polling in Arkansas that had him above it, but again, that poll is like at least half a year old, so we can't really say if that's accurate. So what it does is everyone that receives 15% gets one delegate. If the winner of the primary has more than 50%, he receives everything else. If the winner doesn't have 50% else, then everything is allocated proportionally. So in this particular case, it's just a question whether Trump gets 39 or 40. I'm just going to go with 40 for now. Makes it a little easier for us. Next up, American Samoa. And this is a little bit of a weird one, because the delegates are chosen in such a way that they best reflect the presidential preference of all participants. Basically, we're just going to have a vote. Whoever wins the majority gets everything. It's just a weird way of saying winner take all. But the rules state the delegates are unbound unless instructed otherwise. So, I'm just going to assume Trump gets the majority and we'll leave it at that. Now we have California. Well, it's a winner take most. If the winner gets more than 50% of the vote, he gets everything. Thank you, David Giglio, for that, and Laura Loomer. Cheers. This one's for you. Because if you didn't know otherwise, the DeSantis team, together with Harmeet Dillon, they wanted to make this a straight-up proportional system, robbing Trump of at least 50 delegates. Here we go. Trump has 64% of the vote, with 6% undecided. Pretty obvious what's going to happen. So now we're at Colorado. And this is a fun one. Trump is going to be on the ballot. Don't even... Supreme Court is going to intervene. They're going to say he is going to be on the ballot. So what it says, any candidate receiving 20% or more of the vote shall be allocated delegates accordingly to the proportional of the vote. Colorado. Well, there's no polling, but Trump is the only one above 20%, and if we allocate all undecided votes to Nikki Haley, who is in second place, she gets 18%. So that's not even at the threshold yet, so Trump gets everything. Funny how that's going to work, right? So, let's see, now the next one, we have Massachusetts. If a candidate receives 50% or more, he gets all delegates. Maine. Again, the Supreme Court is going to rule on both Colorado and Maine at the same time. Because it's going to be a point of, can you disqualify a presidential candidate because of an allegation, essentially. Well, that's not going to be true. You're going to need a conviction, because that's how the system works. We aren't fucking communists here. So, delegates. If a candidate receives more than 50% of the vote, he receives everything. Otherwise, there is a 20% threshold. Well, it just means Trump gets everything. Minnesota, and this is one of the really weird ones. We have 8 congressional districts that each have 3 delegates. 20% threshold is required. If any candidate receives 80% of the vote, he gets everything. Or sorry, if a candidate is 60%, he can receive 2 delegates. And if any delegates, each delegate the highest vote getter. So what does this mean? 20% threshold is required to be a contender. Well, here's the simple point in Minnesota. Trump is polling at 60%. DeSantis at 17%. And there's 6% undecided. Let's say DeSantis gets everything. It still means Trump is polling at 60%. probably a little higher because votes are shuffling. So what does that mean? 60% of the vote receives 2 delegates, and DeSantis would get. So this is the bare minimum. Let's see, we're at. So this is 24. We're going to 16 and 8. This would be what the Minnesota GOP had in mind. Now, in the case, I don't believe that Ron DeSantis is performing well in Minneapolis and St. Paul, so those 3 congressional districts. He ain't getting those, and Trump does get those. Trump. I don't know why I keep saying Trump. Probably some brain malfunction, I guess. So with that, we have already allocated this. Hell, maybe if it's even that we have the suburbs in the south, so Angela Craig's district. Now going, we could say that Nikki Haley is going to win one of those districts. Don't really believe it. Now we have the final one. So the final 15. If a candidate receives 80% more of the statewide vote, he gets all at-large delegates. Otherwise, candidates proportionally allocated to contenders receive 20% or more of the vote. What does that mean? We have 15 delegates. DeSantis gets slightly above 20%. So I think we had the agreement that he gets 23% of the vote. So that's 3.4, and we have rounded nearest whole number. So DeSantis gets this, and Trump gets everything else. Glad to have come to that conclusion. North Carolina, 74 delegates, 42 for each congressional district. And here's the fun part. If a candidate receives 2/3 of the vote, or if only one candidate has 20% or more, he receives all delegates. DeSantis is at 13%, and there is roughly 6% undecided. So there's no way that DeSantis gets anywhere near that threshold. So we have 14. That means Trump already gets 42 right off the gate. The remaining 32, proportionally for anyone getting more than 20%, you get the point, right? So this is what is going to happen with a lot of contests here. And we aren't even done with Super Tuesday yet. If any candidate in Oklahoma receives more than 50% of the vote, he gets everything. Well, Trump is polling way ahead. Trump is polling at 70%. This is actually one of his strongest states in the entire contest. Now we have Tennessee. And it says if any candidate receives 2/3 of the vote, so it's the same rule as North Carolina. And the thing is, with Tennessee, DeSantis has a chance of getting it, but it's an outside shot. So I'm just gonna, for convenience sake, we're just gonna say Tennessee is going all to Trump. Texas is 40 congressional districts. Winner take all, so basically a majority. If you get more than 50%, you get everything. Well, Trump is polling at 65%, so he gets everything. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Now, Super Tuesday is almost rounding up, so we have Vermont, and I'm just going anti-alphabetical now, because Utah is the one that Trump is the weakest at. If anyone receives more than 50% of the vote in Vermont, you get all delegates, aka Trump gets all. Virginia, 33 delegates are allocated if you have more than 50%, or if the number 2 does not have 15. So in the case of Trump in Virginia, he has 60% of the vote, which means essentially, sorry, that was Haley. Here you go. And now Utah. And Utah is the one that is a little bit scuffed, because the polling we do have has Trump at 30% of the vote, DeSantis at 14%, Haley at 13%, with 36% undecided. Now that's not reliable polling. So how about we do a little bit of math? That's always fun, right? So what if Trump gets 10% of the vote? Of that remaining undecided, so 40% of the vote. Now you have 26% that can be allocated to DeSantis and Haley. And let's say DeSantis gets 16 out of the remaining 26. So now you have Trump at 40% of the vote, DeSantis at 30%, and Haley at 23%. Simply put, there is an outside shot of Trump getting a majority here. It's not going to happen. But for the sake of convenience, we're going to say everyone gets an equal share of the undecideds. Which means Trump gets 42% multiplied by 40 is 16.8. What does Utah say? If anyone gets 50% of the vote, he gets everything. That's not the case. If 3 or more candidates receive 15% of the vote, that is the case. The 40 delegates are proportionally allocated to those contenders. And the rounding is beginning with the candidate who receives the most votes, multiply the percentage received by, so you take the percentage, in this case we have 16.8, and round up any remainder to the next whole number, which means Trump gets 17 delegates. Now we have number 2. And we're just going back to the Excel for a little bit because I want to read it. So DeSantis gets 26% of the vote, which means 11 delegates. And Haley, she gets 0.25 multiplied by 40, which is exactly 10 delegates. Now there are 2 delegates left over. What does it say if there's anything left over? Repeat the process until all 40 are allocated. Well, that's fun because I've rounded everything up already, except for Haley, because it's just a flat 10. 2 delegates left over. Let's do 1 for Trump, 1 for DeSantis. Be done with it, right? So now we're at the end of Super Tuesday. Trump at 1,057 delegates. He still needs roughly 177 delegates. Let's just check on my recording real quick. Yep, still going strong. Good. So, now we're at the final states. We have... Let's do the islands real quick. So we have second Super Tuesday, right? That is Georgia, Hawaii, Mississippi, and Washington. Let's go for the easiest one first. Washington. So we have 43 congressional districts, 43 delegates. So there's a little bit of an itch here. Alright, so we have 30 delegates. If any candidate receives the majority, or if only one candidate receives 20% of the vote. Well, in the case of Washington, Trump is at above 60, which means he gets all 30. For the at-large, if a candidate receives the majority, he gets everything. So, Washington. Mississippi, with its 40 delegates. If a candidate receives more than 50% of the vote, he gets everything. Right? Pretty damn easy at this point. State of Georgia. 59 delegates. Now we're at the point, right? This is make or break for DeSantis. Because Florida is not going to be a contest DeSantis is winning, and he does not want to lose that state, because losing your own home state is a killer in your own political career. Ask Scott Walker. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that one. Okay, so we have Georgia, if any candidate receives more than 50% of the vote, he gets all congressional delegates. And see, statewide, minimum of 20% threshold. So, what is Georgia polling at? Trump is at 60, which means for every congressional district, he gets everything. Now, for the remaining 17 districts, anyone receiving more than, 20% of the vote gets delegates. Well, the number 2 is DeSantis polling at 14%, with little over 6% undecided. Well, 90% of undecideds aren't going to vote against Trump. That's just not going to happen, so DeSantis is not going to exceed the threshold, so Trump gets everything. And Trump is already at 1,200 delegates, or 1199. 1,099 delegates. Salute to the Cobra Cast. Alright. Hawaii, the last contest on the second Super Tuesday. This is a fun one because it's allocated proportionally. Starting with the highest number of votes, rounded up. So, statewide, 10%, 10 delegates. Trump gets 62% of the vote, which means he gets 7 delegates. Number 2 is Nikki Haley with 11%. She's going to get 2. And the remaining delegate goes to DeSantis. Now for the congressional districts. Let's assume proportionality. Trump gets 4, Haley gets 2. What happens to the RNC delegates? The committee supports any of to fill delegate positions, and in the case of the statewide vote, if anyone receives a majority, he gets delegates. So Trump gets 14. 1,213, which means just 21 delegates left to go. March 15th, the Mariana Islands. Nine delegates, presidential preference, and it is a winner-take-all convention. So Trump gets it. Guam, Saturday, March 16th, so that is together with the second Super Tuesday essentially. No formal process. However, they can decide who they support. Now, last time around, Guam went ahead and gave everything to Trump. So we're looking at this, and the last contest is Puerto Rico. The first part of it is simply saying whoever receives 50% or more gets the delegates, and Trump is definitely polling above 50. So let's say we have the states chronologically. Northern Marianas, Guam, Nevada. Technically speaking, Donald Trump has already got it clinched right here. 3 delegates technically needed, but what are the opportunity in the remaining 26 states that Donald Trump does not get 3 delegates? Especially when Arizona is winner take all, Florida is winner take all, Illinois, Kansas, Ohio, they're winner take all in this particular territory that we're polling at right now. So Trump is going to get everything, including Puerto Rico. So, in conclusion, let's just clear up like 90% of the fucking windows that I have open. In conclusion, and we're just in the 40-minute mark, so I'm just going to say this. March 16th, maybe you can stretch it up to April, but Donald Trump has the nomination clinched by the time we are in the 4th month of this year. The only thing that's really exciting is who he's going to run against. In the case of the Democrats, I don't believe Biden's going to stick around. There's going to be some kind of health episode, and at the DNC convention is just going to swap him out. So that's going to be like August, is going to be swapped out. I've heard some rumors about Gavin Newsom. I don't buy it because Newsom is performing horrible in the Rust Belt. I think it's going to be either Gretchen Whitmer or it's going to be Hillary Clinton. One of those two. Let's just leave it at that. Don't really have much else to say. I'm going to do some other polling and predictions real quick. That's going to be in the next videos. And then I'm going to do a medical update in the current period. Thank you kindly for watching. 2024 is going to be a great year. Donald Trump is going to win the White House again. And we're going to be smiling all the way to victory. Thank you very much, friends. I'll speak to you later. Cheers.